My name's Sinead. I run the Facebook group called Unlike Youth Defence. I trust women to decide their lives for themselves. You'll find us at facebook.com/not always a better option if you haven't already. And we've got a few speakers lined up for you today to tell you more about the situation in here, what we're going to do to change it, and how we're going to see change in our lifetime. So first we have Colette Brown from the Irish Examiner, who has over the past months and years written amazing articles about the right to abortion in Ireland for Irish women. So Colette.
Hi everyone. First of all, I just want to say I'm delighted to be here today with all of you as we drag our state kicking and screaming into the 21st century. It's amazing to see so many people turn out here today because, as you know, we don't really have a very proud history of protest in this country. But the fact that we have to come here today and protest for the rights of women, for access to a safe and legal abortion, is actually something that I'm very angry about and something that I'm very frustrated about. And I'm pretty sure that you all feel the same way.
I'm angry.
In 1992, the former Supreme Court Justice Niall McCarthy, in his X-case judgment, said that the fact that the Irish state hadn't introduced legislation to give effect to the competing rights that are outlined in the Constitutional Amendment from 1993 wasn't just unfortunate, it was inexcusable. He was ignored. 6 years later, another High Court judge, this time in the C case, said that the fact that Irish women had to turn up to courts to access an abortion was completely and utterly without foundation. She was also ignored. In 2002, the then Fianna Fáil-led government tried to introduce a referendum which would have limited the access of abortion to suicidal women. The people said no, they were ignored. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty fed up with being ignored. Incredibly, the bill that Claire Daly tried to introduce earlier on this year, which would have simply enacted the provisions of the X case, was defeated in the Dáil, with TDs like Fine Gael's Michelle Mulhern saying that no, we should wait, now isn't the time, we really need to discuss this a bit further. I think that we've waited long enough. Now, I just want to briefly mention some of the abortion myths that we're all going to hear a lot about from the usual suspects over the coming months as the debate heats up. The first abortion myth is that the pro-life lobby represents the majority views of the Irish people. This is simply untrue. The Irish people in successive referendums have always voted to ensure that Irish women would have access to safe and legal abortions, albeit in limited circumstances when the life of the mother is at risk. But still, our government, successive governments, have failed to even introduce this small measure. The fact that in 2012 it's considered controversial for a government to introduce legislation to save women's lives is an abomination. It's abhorrent. The second myth that we're all going to hear a lot over the coming months is that any legislation to give effect to the X case judgment is a liberalisation of Irish law. This is also untrue. Any legislation that would be enacted is simply going to give effect to a constitutional right that has existed since 1983 for 30 years. Now, there are some TDs who don't want to introduce legislation even to save women's lives. TDs like Fine Gael TD James Bannon, who recently said that he wouldn't countenance any kind of legislation, no matter what the circumstances, because he felt that he wanted to represent God's law in the Irish Parliament and not the law of the people. I think it's time that we send a message to TDs like James Bannon and other arch conservatives in the Irish government that they're there to represent us, and if they feel prostrate to God's law, then they should join a seminary and get out of Leinster House. Another myth that's being propagated is the fact that there's some kind of abortion debate. There is no debate. The debate is over. It was over in 2002 when the Irish people defeated the government's attempt to further limit the rights of women to an abortion. Even the pro-life lobby legal advisor William Binchy has admitted as much. He said that the only options open to the government are a referendum to further restrict the rights of women or else legislation. Now, the government has tried on 2 separate occasions to restrict women's rights to an abortion, and the people have always said no. So the only credible option available to the government is legislation, and we want legislation. The abortion laws on the Irish statute book are 151 years old, and abortion is still punishable by a life sentence. The 1983 constitutional amendment is a relic from an era when homosexuality was illegal, divorce was illegal, and you needed prescription to buy contraception. Ireland has changed. It's time the law did too. Finally, just a final word, I just want to appeal to everybody here to please lobby your TDs, your senators, lobby everyone that you can think of. Politicians, as we've seen in recent weeks, principles they're kind of a rare commodity among some of our TDs and ministers at the moment, and their actions are almost entirely self-serving. If they don't see a reward for themselves, then they're not going to support legislation. So we need people to call to TDs, to email TDs, to ring them and just make your voices heard. We're on the brink of a very historic occasion, the first time in the history of the state that legislation will be introduced to give women access to a safe and legal abortion. Let's not let it slip through our fingers.